If you're watching this video, you want to know how to make a production in the style of Ed Sheeran. Well, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to break down an Ed Sheeran type beat that I made inspired by his latest song at the time of recording this video, Just a Little More. Now, this is kind of like the style which is going into his Play album. With Ed Sheeran, there tends to be a mix, but there is a blueprint for making an Ed Sheeran type beat, which I'm going to run through in this video, especially if you want to make a beat like Just a Little More. So what I have out in front of me here is the production. Most of this is Logic-based software. So if you are someone who uses Logic, then this video is very much for you. But even if you don't, there is still the principles that can be taught and explained in this video for anyone who doesn't use Logic. So what I've got in front of me right now is the beat. So let's have a quick listen to what it is we are going to be breaking down today. Now, my advice for anyone who wants to make a beat in a certain style, especially when it comes to Ed Sheeran, is to have the main principles down of the feel for the track straight off the bat. So, in a lot of cases with Ed Sheeran stuff, it's percussive, it's, you know, the acoustic guitar, but this track by Ed Sheeran is slightly different today because it's not based around acoustic guitar. It's actually based, I feel, around the whole drum groove of the track. That's what really drives just a little more on throughout the production. So what I did today was I created the drums first. Now for the drums, I'm personally using the Abbey Road 80s drummer. I use this a lot, and I adjusted the room mix just to get it just right because it's a very dry mix for the drums, but there's just that little bit of slapback that you can hear from the room, which sounds like this. And it's a very simple drum beat as well. So it's, if we listen to the kick and snare first, you can hear by itself. Boom, ba, boom, ba. Then the hi-hat's just, yeah, just like that. And then what I did do is I added, if you listen very carefully, I added just a little drum fill at the end of each 2 bars. Sorry, which I added in just here. Just like that. Then that's something that is in the Ed Sheeran track, and it's just really nice because it really helps with the bounciness of the track, and it's just one of them things which keeps the drums a little bit more interesting than just repeating the same thing every time. So then obviously we've got toms here for a fill, and then for the chorus we've got some crashes, which again is very simple. It's crashes all together and then some rides. And what I like to do in chorus crashes, I like to throw a couple of crashes towards the end there just to keep it alive, because if you just hit a crash at the start of the chorus and repeat that every 4 bars, it makes the chorus have a little bit less energy. And if you actually like watch drummers, a lot of the time they like to use crashes in choruses to emphasize certain stamps in the chorus, and that's what we've done here. So now we've got the drums down, the next thing to add is the electric guitar. Now, one thing that you really hear about the electric guitar in this is very sort of, I wouldn't say jazzy, but it's very funky sounding guitar. It's got a real nice groove to it which bounces off the drums. So what I've used today is I've used a big tube preset in Logic. And then one thing I like to do with drums is I add to like a sample delay. So this basically doubles up the guitar with a slight bias to whichever side you put the delay on, because how it is I perceive it. But this is a Logic plugin. I use it for so much stuff to create a stereo spread. It is fantastic, and I highly recommend that you use it. If you're not a guitarist and you're someone who uses samples, that's completely fine, because if you use samples, you just have to find the right electric guitar sound. Now, if you really want to create something in this style specifically, then 113 BPM, so 110 to 115 BPM is what you want to be looking for, pop guitar. And it's okay to use samples. And if you are someone who uses samples, by the way, I have a sample pack which I released earlier this year called the Ultimate Pop Producer Sample Pack, which is linked in the description below. So if you like to use samples and you're always looking for pop samples, I highly recommend after this video you check that out. If not, you can also sign up to my producer Patreon and you will get that sample pack for free when you sign up to producer Patreon. But with that plug out the way, I recorded this electric guitar in. Now for the electric guitar, I'm going to quickly show you what I've done, because you can really just do this how you want. So this is what this sounds like. And all I've done is I've played quite high up the electric guitar. So if you're someone who knows power chords, which you might not hear this, but as you go up the guitar, obviously you can go onto like this part, and then you can go up when you play your CD. All I've done here just there, up there. I mean, that wasn't very good guitar playing, but I was at a weird angle. But you get the idea. You got to play it high up the frets to get that really cool kind of funky guitar sound. If you're not a guitarist, I mean, if you are a guitarist, you could probably explain that better than I did. But this is what I recorded in. So when it's with the drums, you get this really nice bounce. Okay, now we need to move on to the keys, because I feel like there's a slight retro feel to this production, and you really get that from the keys. And for the keys today, I've decided to first use the classic Suitcase MK4, which again, it is a Logic Pro X keyboard. And what I'm really trying to focus on here is trying to eliminate the drums and play the keys with the guitar. You will notice that there's two parts to the keys, and this is very much the case in A Little More by Ed Sheeran. So you've got the lower bass part, which go in the bum, 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 and then you've also got the keys. Now these are countering off each other, which creates this really nice sort of like bounce from the keys. And it creates that really nice sway that you get in the production. So when you actually add it in with the drums and the guitar, it kind of fills in the gaps where the drums and the guitars are. And then all of a sudden you've got that really nice bounce in the production. Make sure you're using both hands on the keys, even if you're just recording them separately. I recorded the bass note in separately with my left hand after I'd record the chords in. But the chords, especially, like there's a lot of kind of like jazzy things going on here, like a couple of sevenths where it makes sense. But overall, this captures the sort of mood of the production that we want. So when I go on to the next part is I added in this extra electronic piano, which again is the Suitcase Mark IV. And this one's playing a really nice high octave downwards spiral, kind of like you hear in the A Little More production, which sounds like this. So all of a sudden we're really now starting to get the actual vibe for the track. Next we're going to need a bouncy bass line. Now, out of personal preference, I use the Rickenbacker bass by Native Instruments and the Muted to record this bass line, but there are basses in Logic Pro X that you can use as well, or your selected DAW to use it. But the main thing is how you play the bass in, and you really want it to bounce with the drums. So at this point, you can just mute everything. You maybe just keep the guitar in as well, but you really just want to focus on the relationship between the bass guitar and the drums in this, because that's what's going to create that nice symmetry in the rhythm section where the bass is going to sit in so well. So I recorded this bass line in, which I'll just play first by itself. And then if you listen to it with the drums, and then with the guitar. So as you can hear, the bass isn't really following the guitar. It's doing its own thing, but that kind of adds a whole extra element to the production. A lot more movement going on, a lot more kind of like, a lot more of like a diverse mix. It's not all just like blocky, like everything's playing the exact same chords, everything's playing the exact same melody. You've got a lot of moving melodies on here, which can create really nice counter harmonies at very minute points in the production, which can make the production sound so much better for it overall. So far when you put that all together, you get this, which basically is the verse, minus obviously with the crashes are in there. Okay, now it's really about building up the kind of like warm analog synth section that we've got going on here. So firstly, I wanted to throw a classic pad in, and there's no rules at this point. If you find the right sound, try and find a way to fit it into the mix. So I found this classic pad here, which is in the classic section, and it's just a very gentle, light pad. And what I love about building up a pad section is just build up the pads by itself and then listen to how they harmonize to each other, because you can try and find the right sound, or you can blend different sounds together like I've done here, and eventually it creates this one pad sound. So even though I've got 4 different pads here, they all create one pad, if that makes sense. So then next we've got the Aurora Waves. All of these are Logic stock pads, by the way. So this is then adding something different. And then I added the analog waves. Then I added in a floating plasma. And that's got some movement to it. So as you can hear, like, when you put it all together, that for me is just one pad, which I blended 4 pads together to get it, which when you actually add it into the production, adds that really nice extra bit of air, bit of like brightness, but also that bit of like filler in the background, with like kind of like filling in the spaces where everything we added so far hasn't been able to get to. Create an atmosphere, set the scene. Now then, at this point, one thing I really love to do is add in some deep 808 bass, even though this isn't a trap song, but deep 808 bass, especially the Alchemy one, when you set the attack to 20%, it just creates this really nice sub bass without the attack that you get from an 808, which basically when you just add it to the chorus only, it adds this real nice extra sort of like stamp to when the chorus starts, which makes it sound so much bigger than the verses before. Now, I'll give you an example of that. So I'm going to mute the deep 808 bass. And by the way, at this point, I do recommend you have headphones on because you'll be able to hear this so much better. But firstly, if we do this, without the deep 808 bass, it sounds like this. Okay, now we're going to add in the deep 808 bass. Very subtle, but it just has a really subtle little lift to it, and it adds a lot more to the low end, because the low end could be something that's very hard to feel, especially in like a band production. So it's just, sometimes it just makes sense to add that in. Now the next thing is the brass. The brass can be a very hard thing, especially from a MIDI point of view, to put in, because a lot of MIDI brass doesn't sound very good. But what I've done for the brass today is I've added in the Mississippi joint, which is in the 7-piece section in Logic Pro X. And what I've done is, all of this was already in. I've just added in the ROM reverb, which is Native Instruments, but you can add in any reverb, which has a 62% mix. The size is relatively small, 0.88. Now, the whole idea of this was to put the brass in a room to make them sound live and not like just MIDI super clean. Because the one thing you don't want to do with brass is make it sound too clean, because if it's MIDI and it sounds clean, you are going to notice it big time. It's going to stick out like a sore thumb. It's not going to sound very good. So make sure with all your MIDI brass, put it in some sort of a room to give it more of a live feel. That way it will sound less MIDI. So my best example to give that is just if I mute the reverb. As you can hear, that sounds very MIDI. And then we add in the room. And all of that, and obviously in them little da-da-da, it sounds MIDI, but overall it sounds a lot better than it did. And in A Little More by Ed Sheeran, you can hear there is brass in there just doing these little stamps throughout the chorus, which makes it sound like this. The best thing as well is when you add things into the context of the mix, the whole MIDI sound disappears anyway. So if you isolate the brass like I've done here and you solo it and you listen to it by itself, it may sound MIDI, especially like here. But when you add it in whole context of the mix with everything else going on, it suddenly will sound less MIDI. So that's basically what I essentially did for the brass. Very simple mixing. And then the last thing I added was just the deluxe modern electronic piano, just to add that final bit of flavor. That really nice retro warm keys, which I felt like the track was missing. And then once you get to this point, you can just add different things to make it feel like it makes sense. The deluxe modern is definitely something I recommend you add to a lot of productions in this style, because it just adds that real nice retro warmth to productions. And there you go, just like that, you have an Ed Sheeran, Just a Little More type beat. And by the way, guys, this is, if you're an artist, this is something that you can download for free if you want to try and write something over this. I'll leave a link below for that. And don't forget, if you want to get your hands on 1,000 royalty-free samples from the Ultimate Pop Producer Sample Pack, click the link in this video, go check that out. Or if you want that pack for free, go sign up to the Producer Patreon on my Patreon page. But guys, let me know in the comments below as well what other artists you want me to do type beat breakdowns of. But till the next video, guys, keep making music, and I'll see you in the next video.